Today we set out to explore Yosemite National Park, but before getting into that I need to mention that our SD card actually corrupted a few weeks after this, resulting in us losing pretty much all of our West Coast footage from this point on. It's a real shame, but I'll try and cobble together a few videos based on my photos. Sorry for the delay, I took a bit of a break from making videos, but hopefully I'll get a few more out now. So around this time, we also got a message from our Montana friend Eileen telling us that the Going to the Sun Road in Glacier National Park will close on September 16th. And this is the main road that goes through all the best parts of the park, so it sort of gave us a bit of a deadline to get to Montana for. Arriving in Montana is also when we'll switch from just photos back to videos again. The first thing we noticed when we got into Yosemite was that it was busy. Real busy. We woke up a bit later than we wanted, and so we struggled to find a parking spot for a while. Before we even parked up properly, we pulled over at the side of the road for a short stroll along the river to take pictures. Eventually, we found a spot in an overflow car park, located a short walk away from Yosemite Village. Unlike Sequoia, Yosemite felt less like wilderness and more like a small town. Sequoia had a fair amount of infrastructure, but Yosemite was on a whole other level. We decided to check out Mirror Lake. Apparently this lake shows perfect reflections of the surrounding scenery, so long as you get there early enough.
We found some black-tailed deer.
One free shuttle bus, and a short hike later, we were at Mirror Lake, although we didn't get much of a chance to see its reflectiveness, since there were a lot of people swimming in it. It was another really hot day, so we decided to jump in for a dip too.
That's a boyfriend. Right there.
Oh yeah. What do you want to do about YouTube videos? Do you think we're ever going to have time to make them, or no?
We'll really have to see.
Yeah. I guess we spent more time than we realised swimming in Mirror Lake, because before we knew it, the day was almost over. I think this was around the time we decided on finally spending at least another day in Yosemite. Our last stop for today before calling it a night was Tunnel View. This iconic overlook offered sweeping, dynamic views of Yosemite, showing off all its iconic mountainous features, from El Capitan to Half Dome. The view was absolutely stunning. On our way out of the park, we both agreed that tomorrow we'd go on our first big hike. Personally, I really wanted to go up Half Dome, but after a little bit of research, it turned out you needed a permit for this. Not only that, but the permit wasn't just a simple case of pay a small fee and get to climb the mountain. It was this weird lottery system where you have to apply for it on a chosen date, then on that date you find out if you're actually allowed to go up it or not. Personally, I think that's dumb, but I suppose it's for the sake of preservation or something. Anyway, this is also when we found out that it's perfectly fine in America to sleep overnight in a national forest, and most national parks are surrounded by some sort of national forest. Ideal. So we bought some expensive California-priced petrol, made even more expensive by the fact that we're getting it up in the mountains, and I bought this Yosemite beer. Very nice, by the way, if a little generic. Now might also be a good time to mention that we tried to collect a postcard and a patch from each of the national parks we visited. So here's our Yosemite souvenirs, and since I forgot to include them in the last video, here's our Sequoia merch too. Before heading back into the park, we quickly stopped off at Tunnel View again, to get some nice morning shots of the mountains. Once we were back in the park, we struggled to find a parking spot again, but once we found one, we asked a lady at an information booth about good one-day hikes. She suggested the Vernal Falls Mist Trail, so that's what we did. After catching another packed shuttle bus to the start of the trailhead, we got walking. This must have been a really popular trail because it was very busy, people everywhere. We even joked about this national park feeling more like a theme park, with a lot of these hiking trails feeling more like queues. But you could see why this place was so popular. The scenery was absolutely beautiful. And after a long uphill battle, we reached Vernal Falls. And it was worth the long trek. It looked like a cartoonishly picturesque waterfall, coming from a perfectly vertical slab of granite wall. Advancing further up the slippery steps, we arrived at Emerald Lake. Other people were swimming in it, but we decided to keep pushing forward with the hike. We got further up the mountain, which allowed me to get this amazing photo of Vernal Falls from a higher angle. Unfortunately, this is the only photo I have, since I think I was mostly filming at this point. Again, lost all that footage. Real bummer. After a really long switchback trail back down the mountain, we eventually got back to our van, where we had a bit of an issue. The dash was showing that we were all out of engine oil. This didn't seem quite right, but I took it at face value. Luckily, there was a mechanic shop located in Yosemite Village, so I walked over to it and ended up buying some engine oil. I didn't even know what type of oil to get, but after a little bit of research, we thought we knew what the right type was. We also tried calling up the rental company, but it was after hours, so they couldn't do anything to help us. We knew we weren't allowed to stay overnight in the park, but when I mentioned this to the mechanics, they told me that they were the ones who tow vehicles away that stay overnight, and that due to our situation, they would allow us to stay overnight in the park. So at the very least, out of this whole ordeal, we got to stay right in the heart of Yosemite for free. The next morning, before even attempting to put any new engine oil in the van, we made sure to get a hold of Zach, who we met back at the van depot to rent the van in the first place. He gave us his phone number in case anything like this happened. Now this is the real kicker. He told me this is a common issue with the dashboard displaying incorrect information. He ran me through how to restart the dashboard info, where it was revealed that we were in fact not out of engine oil at all. Now knowing that our van was actually fine all along, we drove over to the mechanics on the way out of the park to see if we could get a refund on the oil. They said normally this would be fine, but only the manager can handle refunds, and he wouldn't be in for a couple days. Now, I spent quite a bit of money on this pointless engine oil, and so I really wanted to get this refund. So we had 2 days to kill. For the rest of the day, we drove out of the main Yosemite Valley area, and explored more of the northern side of the national park. This involved driving through Tuolumne Meadows, getting a view of Half Dome from Olmsted Point, and checking out Tenaya Lake. This area was far less busy than the main valley, but it was still beautiful, and I would even say it's an underrated area of the park. This exciting mountain road eventually led us down into the small town of Lee Vinning. We decided to park up overnight in this town, since it was right next to Bodie, an old 1800s gold rush ghost town that had been perfectly preserved over the ages. More on that tomorrow. We grabbed some beers from the local shop and parked up beside a small road with a fantastic view of Mono Lake. This is also where we met a man called Gary, who volunteered for the local fire service. He told us a lot of interesting facts about the lake and star constellations. He also told us about the nearby Lundy Lake, which was apparently a great fishing spot. Today we got up nice and early and drove a short 20 minutes down the road to Bodie. The road into Bodie was a bit rough, but we saw other RVs and campers heading down it, so it was probably fine. Once in Bodie, we had to pay a small $5 fee to park up and walk around. But it was worth it, since this place was fascinating. A pretty typical story of a gold rush town that once the gold dried up, the town was left abandoned. We watched a short documentary on the town, and apparently back in the day it was a pretty rough place to live, known for drinking, gambling, and prostitution. Walking around this place, it really felt like being transported back in time to the 1800s. We felt like we'd pretty much seen everything Bodie had to offer by the early afternoon, so for the rest of the day we decided to take Gary's advice and try a spot of fishing at Lundy Lake. We had bought a fishing rod in Lee Vinning, but neither of us had ever gone fishing before, so we didn't exactly know what to do. At Lundy Lake, we got speaking to a woman named Cassie, who was very knowledgeable about fishing. She gave us a good rundown of what to do and what we needed to know, and before we knew it, we had caught 2 fish. Rainbow trout, I believe. Alicia was very pleased with her catch. We returned back to the same spot we'd stayed the previous night and cooked up our fish. I gutted the fish and Alicia did the cooking. We didn't get much meat from them, but it was an enjoyable meal nonetheless. Really grateful Gary told us about Lundy Lake, and thanks a bunch to Cassie for showing us how to fish. The next morning, we returned to Yosemite Valley to ask about our refund on the unneeded engine oil. The man who handled refunds was a little bit rude, honestly. It sounded like he didn't want to give us the refund, but I talked him into it eventually. After that, we made our way straight towards San Francisco. We drove for a fair few hours and slept in a Walmart car park in Los Banos. This is also when we discovered just how great Taco Bell was. We used Taco Bell's frequently on this trip as a place to charge up the laptop, more or less for free. Just buy a couple of items off the dollar menu, and you could sit there for as long as you wanted. We'd back up our photos and videos and charge the laptop at the same time. While here, we also did a little bit of research into the Winchester Mystery House, which is something I wanted to check out on our way into San Francisco. Tickets were somewhat pricey, but this is something I wanted to do, so I booked them anyway. We arrived at the Winchester Mystery House in San Jose, nice and early for our tour. It was a bit cheesy, but it was entertaining regardless. The house itself was marvellous and beautiful to look at. The story goes that the wife of the bloke who invented the Winchester rifle thought she was being haunted by the spirits of everyone her husband's invention had killed, so in an attempt to confuse the spirits, she commissioned this house to be built. With confusing hallways and stairs that led to nowhere, it's certainly interesting to see this legendary manor house in person. After that, we headed out of San Jose and up towards San Francisco. It was already late afternoon by the time we had arrived. We managed to find a free parking spot by a yacht club, with a view of Alcatraz Island and the Golden Gate Bridge, although the weather wasn't doing the bridge any favours. We walked towards the Palace of Fine Arts and wandered around here while trying to work out what our San Francisco plans would be. The stone monoliths in this park were beautiful. We talked about how it felt like we were in Spain or something, not America. After that, we decided to walk along the bay heading eastward, passing by some iconic landmarks. We eventually arrived at Pier 39, where we spent some time pissing around in this mirror maze. I love piers, I love mirror mazes, so this was very fun. Unlike Santa Monica, Pier 39 didn't have many rides as such, but plenty of shops that Alicia enjoyed browsing through. She won a rubber duck in an arcade machine too, so that was nice. We walked back to the van and decided that where we'd parked might not be good for overnight, so we drove over the iconic Golden Gate Bridge at night while it was covered in fog, and on the other side of the bridge there's this rest stop which is good for overnight parking. Although according to iOverlander it's supposed to be a bit dodgy here, but I felt pretty safe. This morning we woke up to a view of the Golden Gate Bridge, still covered in fog unfortunately. We drove up to Marin Headlands, which is apparently the best spot for views of the Golden Gate Bridge, but by this point the fog was so thick we couldn't even see the bridge at all. I was going to be back in San Francisco though, so I wasn't too bothered about missing out on the bridge for now. To the north, in Santa Rosa, was the Charles M. Schultz Museum. I've always been a big fan of the Peanuts franchise, so this was a must-see for me. I don't have much to say about it. It was cute. It was cool seeing Charles Schultz's office. After that, we headed down towards the coast again. We were done with cities for a little while. Tomorrow, we aim to check out Glass Beach, but on our way towards the coast, we couldn't help but notice we got really close to Monterey, the location of the infamous Bohemian Grove. So in case you don't know, the Bohemian Grove is officially a private campground, owned by the San Francisco-based Gentlemen's Club. The interesting thing about this club, though, is its members, consisting of government officials, many prominent business leaders, former US presidents, as well as various senior media executives and other people in power. In the year 2000, Alex Jones of InfoWars managed to sneak in and get this video footage of mysterious robed figures seemingly worshipping a giant owl statue. So naturally we thought we'd get as close as possible and see what we could see. Unfortunately, we didn't get very far. The entrance is gated off, but the roads leading into the area were oddly smooth and well paved considering it was out in the middle of nowhere. There were several warning signs telling us that we were being filmed, and that we may be prosecuted if we go any further, so we decided against it for now. There is this side entrance that involves walking along a small trail that leads behind a residential area, so I parked up the van somewhere, and we started walking. We got about as far as possible. We went right up to the gate, which was locked, had a bunch of barbed wire, more signs and cameras, the whole lot. Something interesting we did see on this walk, though, was a big wooden fort made of sticks and branches. It was located just outside of the grove itself, and so we joked that this was Alex Jones's bunker. After we escaped the Bohemian Grove unharmed, we found this quaint coastal parking spot on our overlander, just outside of Sonoma State Park, where we got to see some sea lions. Sorry again it took so long to get this one out. I just wasn't feeling particularly motivated, mostly due to the lack of video footage I've got. The next 2 episodes should be out soon, and they'll also be like this, just mostly pictures and a few little phone videos here and there if I have any. Then episode 7 will be me arriving in Montana, and once I'm in Montana, I get all my video footage back. So I look forward to that one. Anyway, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more, and check out the Dirty Krokery SoundCloud if you want to hear some wacky experimental music I'm making with my friends. It's not very good. Okay.